1410 ESPN Radio, because talking about sports is cheaper than therapy.
All right, everybody, we welcome you in live here on a Friday, the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Got a loaded show for you here today. A lot going on. An update on Sharon Moore and the ongoing situation there as his fallout from after being fired by that team up north. We'll talk about who should be the next head coach at Michigan. And honestly, I'll go in a different direction. It's not a list of guys I think should be the next head coach. It's more along the lines of who should not be the next head coach for that team up north. We'll get to that coming up around the corner. But I put this out on the Facebook page a little bit ago, the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, and I want to open up with this because it is crazy that we're wrapping up the season in the next month. There is 1 month remaining in the NFL for the regular season, at least. Right. And, the Browns are 3-10. They have 4 games left. The Bengals 4-9. They have 4 games left. So the season's winding down. 4 more games. The Browns and Bengals have both already had their bye. So it's just a sprint to the finish line as we currently sit here right now. The Browns have the Bears coming up on Sunday. That's a 1:00 kickoff. The Bears at home are a 7.5-point favorite with the Cleveland Browns in town. Now, the Baltimore Ravens are on the road at Cincinnati. Your Bengals welcoming in the Ravens. Baltimore, even amongst all their struggles, are a favorite at Cincinnati. Baltimore, a 2.5-point favorite. As you guys know, the Bengals on Thanksgiving night took round 1 against the Ravens just a few weeks ago, 32-14, and that was at Baltimore. And yeah, Vegas looks at that. I mean, 32-14 at Baltimore. You have the Ravens at home, and you're still a 2.5-point dog. Now, this could have something to do with it. The Cincinnati Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins will not play on Sunday against the Ravens, marking the second game he has missed while in the concussion protocol. Higgins also missed the Bengals' first game against the Ravens, 32-14, when they came away with that win back on Thanksgiving night. So the Bengals got that 32-14 win without T. Higgins back, on Thanksgiving night, and they'll be without T. Higgins once again coming up here on Sunday. But it is pretty crazy because one thing that Joe Burrow said in the press conference the other night was that nobody's even thinking about the playoffs. You could tell he backtracked it a bit because then he started talking about how close they still are. No fan base, wants to hear their star quarterback say that we're not even thinking about the playoffs. You should be thinking about the playoffs. There's 4 games remaining. 4 games remaining, and still within semi-striking distance. Do I believe that the Bengals are making the playoffs? No, absolutely not. 4-9 on the season. The Dolphins, Chiefs, Ravens, and Colts all sitting ahead of them as far as the teams who are on the outside looking in. But the Ravens are 6-7. The Bengals are 4-9. Now, the Ravens are, right there in the mix of things, too. Cincinnati beats the Ravens. Since the Bengals are going to be right there in the mix for that second place in the division and have a chance to still win it. They do have Pittsburgh coming up here not too far off in the distance. So we'll see what ultimately happens when it's all said and done. Or, I'm sorry, not Cincinnati. Cincinnati is going to have the Ravens coming up. They'll have the Dolphins, Cardinals, Browns after that. The Browns will be the only AFC North Division opponent that they have left. But I got to thinking, what's going to happen when the offseason approaches and these 2 teams, the Browns and Bengals, are coming off multiple seasons in a row without making the playoffs? It's kind of crazy that the Browns have actually made the playoffs more recently than the Bengals. That's kind of wild. We talked on yesterday's show about the fact that it's kind of crazy that the Bengals, this is year 6 of Joe Burrow, and they've missed the playoffs in 4 of those 6 years. But it is kind of crazy because when the Bengals do make the playoffs, they found themselves in the AFC Championship game, and they found themselves in a Super Bowl in one of those years. Getting back to the AFC Championship game back-to-back years, a Super Bowl appearance in one of those seasons. But this is going to be the 3rd straight year that they missed the playoffs. This is going to be the 2nd straight season that the Cleveland Browns missed the playoffs. And I guess, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And really, that's sports talk when it comes to the Browns and Bengals. The Bengals get a once-in-a-generation quarterback. They have, an elite wide receiver, 2 of them. They have all this talent, which is a change. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. This just isn't a playoff team. Cleveland, they have an elite defense. They had an elite draft last year. They have one of the best defensive coordinators in football. So the more things change, legit talent, the more they stay the same, still a non-playoff team as we sit here in 2025. So we head into the offseason, and the question I have is both front offices are pretty bad. Both teams are pretty bad. But both teams have something that make them feel like we are close to getting back to where we want to be. The Browns defense puts them in position where they feel like you figure out the offense, you're right where you need to be. The Bengals have the offense. Now they're questioning if we just figure out the defense, we're right where we want to be. So it's up to the front offices to get this done this upcoming offseason. And I guess the question I have for you, based on what we know about the Bengals and the Browns front office, which front office do you trust more to make the right adjustments this upcoming offseason to make sure that we are talking about a playoff team, maybe both as playoff teams a year from right now? Which front office do you trust more? I mean, you have one, it's Cleveland. Even when they do things right, they do it wrong. Even when you draft well and sign good free agents and you go after an elite quarterback, even when you do things right, you still do it wrong. And then you have Cincinnati. You have Joe Burrow. You have Jamar Chase. You have T. Higgins. All right, you selected really good players. When you do things right, though, the Bengals still find a way to do it wrong. I don't trust either one of these front offices, but you have to trust one more than the other. Which one do you believe is actually more equipped to make the proper changes this offseason to better their team heading into next? I actually, as crazy as this sounds, I don't think it's as difficult as what many of you may believe this to be. I think it's Cleveland. Because to be able to have a front office to make changes to improve your team, you have to have a front office that's willing to make changes to improve your team. And that's one thing that I give the Browns front office a lot of credit. They may not make the right choices all the time, but they make choices. They make moves. They make changes. Cincinnati watched last year just how horrendous their defense was and chose to do nothing about it. Well, I'm sorry, they did move on from a really good defensive coordinator, but they try to convince you, the fans, that it was actually the defensive coordinator's fault and not the fact that, the front office just, they suck cheeks when it comes to, picking talent in the draft. So you got to ask yourself, you guys are going to sit here and say, you can't trust Cleveland more than Cincinnati. I do need to ask you, what is it about the Bengals front office that you trust at all? Because I'll tell you what I trust about Cleveland's. Cleveland will spend money. Cleveland will add free agents. Cleveland will try to get better. Cleveland drafts well. Cleveland develops well. Last year, if Shedeur Sanders does continue on this progression and does look like the guy for Cleveland moving forward over these last 4 games, that means Cleveland would have hit on all but one draft pick last year. Schlesinger is their linebacker of the future, right? Quinshon Judkins and Sampson, that's their backfield of the future. Harold Fandon Jr., that's their tight end of the future. And you also talk about Mason Graham. He's going to be a part of that defensive line. He's part of their long-term future. And I'm telling you, if Shedeur is the guy, and he's trending there, I need to see a little more. I'm not going to be that delusional and tell you that Shedeur is the guy, right? But he looks like it so far. He's gotten better and better each game. Yes, it was the Titans, but I've watched less talented quarterbacks or better quarterbacks in your eyes not throw for as many yards as Shedeur did and dominate them the way he did. And a lot of those guys have way better weapons than Shedeur does. So if Shedeur ultimately does become the guy by the end of this 4-game run, I without a doubt believe that the Cleveland Browns front office is more equipped to put them in position to be a playoff team a year from now, more so than I trust the Bengals front office to do the same for theirs. The Bengals won't spend big dollars in free agency. I do not trust their ability to evaluate talent. They have the smallest scouting department in the league. They don't draft well. I mean, how many guys? They just had to cut Jermaine Burton. All right, your first-round picks, your second, third-round picks, none of these draft picks are worth the damn. And it's not like it's what you could say, well, Kinner, the Browns, it's just one really good draft. Yes, but for you, it's every year bad draft. Every year it's bad draft after bad draft after bad draft. And every year it's they won't spend money on free agents, won't spend money on free agents, won't spend money on free agents. So if you're not drafting well, you're not developing well, and you're not adding players, how can you tell me that the Bengals are more equipped to make the proper changes to assure that they're a playoff team a year from now than the Cleveland Browns? The Cleveland Browns aren't perfect. They make a lot of mistakes. They have made a lot of mistakes. But that defense is pretty much all of theirs that they've drafted and developed and paid. The offense, all rookies this year pretty much, that's all their evaluation, their draft, and the way that they've progressed. Harold Fandon Jr., all right, Quinshawn Judkins, you have Sampson. You look on the defensive side of the ball with Schlesinger and Mason Graham, as we talked about. They drafted Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round. Dylan Gabriel didn't work out, but again, that's one piece that didn't work. And maybe that's their backup in the future too. The bottom line is, as crazy as this sounds, I trust the Browns front office more than the Bengals when it comes to making the right changes this offseason to put them in position to be a playoff team a year from now. But it all does come down to Shedeur Sanders, because if Shedeur Sanders is the guy, they have 2 first-round picks, and they don't have to waste it on a quarterback now. And now they can go get a Carnell Tate from Ohio State and go get a left guard to find up that offensive line. Now you have your offensive line covered. You already know who your running backs are. You've added an elite wide receiver in the draft. Sounds like they're connected to a couple of big-name free agents this upcoming offseason when it comes to wide receiver as well. So Shedeur is going to have weapons to throw to. He already has the weapons to hand the ball off to. He has a great tight end. He has a very good tight end in Njoku, and then the best rookie tight end in football, obviously, in Harold Fandon Jr. And then, top 5 defense. I trust the Browns moving forward. If they figured out quarterback, I trust them more than I do Cincinnati at this point. The Bengals front office, you may have the quarterback advantage at quarterback and at wide receiver, but that's about it. The Browns check off every other box. You have quarterback and wide receiver, which isn't something small. I'm not diminishing that. But I think that the Browns, if Shedeur is the guy, the Browns are more set up for success over the next 2-3 years than the Cincinnati Bengals are, and that's even with their franchise quarterback. What are you talking about? They have Joe Burrow. They've had Joe Burrow the last 3 years and have missed the playoffs. You've had Joe Burrow the last 6 years. You've made the playoffs twice. It sounds weird. It sounds crazy. I trust the Browns front office more than I do the Bengals, as stupid as that sounds. Bottom line is, this is basically a debate of my bad front office is better than your bad front office. I don't really know who's winning here, but nonetheless. 937-518-1410. Browns fans, Bengals fans, I do want to hear from you. Which front office is more equipped to make the proper changes to dig their teams out of the hole that they're currently in? The Browns front office or the Bengals? 937-518-1410. We'll be right back.
Yeah, of course Kinner relates to Shador Sanders. He hasn't taken any first-team reps either. The Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Now, back to the Justin Kinner Show, right here on ESPN Dayton, 1410 Wing AM.
The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. 1410 ESPN Radio, Dayton's radio home for Wright State basketball, and we'll have Wright State basketball tomorrow as Wright State is at Marshall. That's a 2 p.m. tip-off. Wright State's going to welcome in Miami out of the MAC on Tuesday, and Miami's rolling right now. And that's a big one at the Nutter Center coming up on Tuesday night. We're going to be giving out tickets for that game. I'll tell you how you can win tickets to that coming up here just around the corner. We opened up talking Browns and Bengals. And, you know, obviously the Bengals are always going to be perceived to be the better franchise than Cleveland. Cleveland is one of the worst franchises in all of sports. But when you shrink it down to kind of who they are right now, you know, which front office do you trust more to make the proper changes this offseason to get their teams back into the playoff hunt a year from now? Which front office do you trust more? You know, I look at Cincinnati. They drafted Joe Burrow. He developed there. He got paid there. Same thing with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. But outside of those three, no one else has really been developed. No one else has been, no other great player has been drafted. No one else has really been developed. There's really no positive sign of direction that the Bengals can go in to say, okay, our identity is Joe Burrow, check it up and hope. Cleveland's not any better. They can't get the quarterback right. Like the Bengals, they draft quarterback and receiver, and they can't get anything else right. The Browns get everything else right, but they can't draft quarterback. And it's like if you could just combine the franchises separate, they're two of the worst franchises in sports, but together, they'd be the best team in football. If Joe Burrow got to play with this defense, the Browns would be unstoppable, or the Bengals would be unstoppable, whoever's morphing into who. But man, oh man, which front office, though, do you trust more? I said, look, I know this sounds like a homer take on my end. Oh, of course he's going to pick the Browns. But I don't know how even the biggest Bengals fan couldn't say that they would rather have the Browns front office than theirs. If you could only pick between these two front offices, which one are you picking? I'm sorry, but I'm going to roll with Cleveland. The only difference between the Browns and the Bengals at this point is that the Bengals had the number 1 overall pick in 20 and the Browns didn't. Because had the Browns got Joe Burrow, had Joe Burrow been the Browns quarterback with this defense, with the Browns run game over the history of Joe Burrow being in the league and everything else, Joe Burrow would have everything he needs. Would he have Jamar Chase? Would he have the elite weapons that the Bengals have provided him? Probably not. But if Joe Burrow is as good as what you guys say, then I think that the likes of the receivers that the Browns have had in recent years would suffice. I trust the Browns front office more. They draft better. They develop better. They spend money on free agents. If they have a deficiency, they attack it. Do they attack every deficiency this past offseason? No. But I truly believe that they thought that, okay, Jerry Jeudy coming off of a career year last year statistically, Cedric Tillman, who was trending in the right direction. Is that Jamar Chase and T. Higgins? No. But it's going to be, if they put up the numbers they did last year with random quarterbacks throwing them the ball, well, let's see what happens if we bring Joe Flacco back. Let's see what happens if one of these rookie quarterback hits. There's a lot that went wrong for Cleveland this year, but ultimately, I look at the draft that they're coming off of. I look at the weapons that are on defense. I look at the money that they spend. Not always, they don't spend it wisely, but they're willing to spend it. I'll take a front office that's willing to spend money and be aggressive over a front office that is watching a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity just blow right past them with having Joe Burrow at quarterback. Say what you want about the Haslams. Are they the best ownership group in football? No. But they have money. They're willing to spend it. Andrew Berry, very good GM. A lot of people bury him, but my goodness. It's hard to look like a good GM when you can't get the quarterback right, but that really wasn't all up to Andrew Berry up into this past draft, and there really wasn't any good quarterbacks in this past draft. And if Shador Sanders ends up looking like the guy, and it does so far, he looked as good as Joe Burrow or anybody against the Titans. Now, can he look like that moving forward when they got the Bills and some other really good teams on their schedule? I mean, that's up for Shador to prove that he can do, but Shador also doesn't have a Jamar Chase or a T. Higgins to throw it to. So we're going to see what happens. But as far as I'm concerned, when you look at the deficiencies with the Bengals and the deficiencies with the Browns, I trust the Browns front office to attack their deficiencies way more than I do the Bengals. How many years in a row is that Bengals front office going to know that their O-line stinks and that it never gets better? How many years in a row is this Bengals defense going to, basically stink and they don't do anything to make it better? How many years in a row are they going to ruin every single draft? There is nothing about this Bengals front office that I trust. I do appreciate Cleveland's front office from time to time because they are willing to spend money. They evaluate talent well. They draft well. They develop well. They just can't get the quarterback right. And once they get that quarterback right with this defense and their rich owner who's willing to spend money and roll over deals and make the cap work, I like Cleveland better than Cincinnati. But, man, I'd much rather have their quarterback. We'll see. 937-518. I think we have Jim in Tip City. Jim, thanks for holding, sir. You're on live.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go with the Browns. The Bengals know their weaknesses, but I don't think the ownership really cares. If you look at it, Justin, most of the teams that are owned by people who went out and got wealthy at some other type of business. They either invented, started something. The Bengals, when they got started out, Paul Brown, the NFL wanted him to have a team. He wanted a team, but he didn't have the money to buy a team. So he had to count on other people, and it became a business. And the Brown family is the only family, one of the few families, I think, that own a team. And they're in it strictly to make money. They run it like a business. They make money. From that standpoint, I guess they do a good job. But only if they get lucky and hit something like a Burrows and a Jamar Chase and a few people have a great year, are they having a chance to get to the Super Bowl. But I'd take the Browns because I think they really want to win. They've just been inept up to this time. They used to say only two things are sure, and I'm going to hang up and let you talk. Two things are sure, death and taxes. Well, I say there's three things for sure right now: death, taxes, and the Bengals will never win a Super Bowl. Take it from there.
Hey, Jim, I appreciate you. Happy holidays. Thank you for listening, and thank you for calling in. But and the Bengals will never win a Super Bowl, and they've come so close. And not just getting there, but, I mean, having a play at the very end to make, and ironically enough, I mean, again, Bengals fans didn't appreciate it, and Bob, I know you're on hold. I will get to you in a second. It's the irony in the fact that they got to the Super Bowl, but it wasn't that they lost the Super Bowl. It's the way that they lost it. If Joe Burrow just got a split second more of blocking up front, he connects with Jamar Chase up that far right sideline, and the Bengals are Super Bowl champions. Like, even when they lose that opportunity. Again, this isn't a Kinner trolling the Bengals segment today. This was a question that was emailed to me earlier, or at least sent on Facebook. Email. What? No, the question was which front office did I think was better? And I said, I'll take the Browns front office any day. Now, the Browns, they're not perfect. And more times than not, they're not good. But it's also hard to say that front office doesn't make some good decisions because that defense was drafted and developed. This front office, like they draft well, they develop well, and they retain well. As bad as Cleveland is, and I know we're coming off an offseason where Myles Garrett was demanding a trade, but players aren't trying to get out of Cincinnati Cleveland as much as what we're seeing here. Cleveland is not perfect. Their ownership has made many, many mistakes. I am not here to be a homer for the Browns, but if I had to pick between Browns ownership and the Bengals, I'm taking the Browns ownership every single day. I think that the Bengals are squandering an opportunity with Joe Burrow. The Browns are so desperate for a Joe Burrow, for a quarterback, that they would go through the hell that they did to try to get a they got Deshaun Watson, but they felt that was their answer to give them the quarterback of skill that the top teams in the league have. And say what you want, because it didn't work, but Deshaun was a top 5 quarterback the last time he played in the NFL for Houston, and that's what they thought that they were getting. And if he was that quarterback that he was in Houston, with the way the Browns ran that football, with that offensive line, with that defense, I'm telling you right now, they would have been way better than any version of Cincinnati we've seen to this point. Not hating, I'm not, but you can't deny it. The Browns are desperate to get a quarterback, and if they would ever get their hands on a Joe Burrow level quarterback, you'll never hear a elite Browns quarterback say, if I'm not having fun, why am I even doing this? Say what you want about Cleveland, but they draft well, they develop well, they spend money, they pay their players, they pay free agents. He just can't get the quarterback right. 937-518-1410. Let's go to my guy, Bob Love. Mr. Love, welcome in, sir. Happy Friday.
Hey, I hope you can hear me, man. I'm driving in the car. Hopefully I don't break up. If I do, go ahead and hang up, and I'll call you back.
You're sounding good. You're sounding good.
Okay, good. I want to say that, first of all, it's a trick question. Do I trust the Bengals front office? No, not entirely. But I will give them credit from this standpoint. Over the last half of the season, I don't know if you've noticed, but the Bengals offensive line is actually ranked top 10. So to say that they can't get all the offensive line, that's not true. They're not giving up sacks. They're not giving up. Chase Brown is playing good ball. He's a good ball player. So you can't say they've only drafted 3 guys. Dylan Fairchild is pretty good. Mims, pretty good. They drafted those guys. And the guy that we got from you guys, Scott Peters, has actually turned that offensive line around. So their offensive line is excellent. DJ Turner, very good, should be a Pro Bowler. Yeah, they haven't gotten a lot of the defense right. I think what the Bengals did this year that killed them, other than, of course, Joe Burrow getting hurt. I think if Joe hadn't have got hurt, I don't think this would be a conversation, because I think they would be in the playoff running. But the fact that you got rid of all of your defensive guys and you brought in these rookie linebackers who can't play, it just takes them a while to get going. I think that's been the biggest issue with the Bengals. Trusting the Browns front office, I just can't forgive you guys having an offensive-minded coach who's pretty good, and you had a quarterback. I don't think you don't need, for as good as the Browns defense, you don't need Joe Burrow for them to really succeed. You had Baker Mayfield, and they blew that up. They screwed that up. The Browns have had, 59 quarterbacks? I can't trust an organization that can't. Come on. They don't need a Joe Burrow. They don't need a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes. All they need is a competent quarterback. They had it with Baker Mayfield. They were just impatient. And Stefanski, while he's won 2 Coach of the Year things, offense is his game. He doesn't have many receivers. He can't get the quarterback right. That's unforgivable to me. As good as your defense, you got an outstanding defense. There's no way that defense, without some kind of quarterback, you don't need a superstar can't get that team going. So,
you do need a superstar quarterback, though. You do. There's a reason Cleveland moved off of Baker, because Baker was really good. And people always do this thing with Baker Mayfield when he starts out the first month of the season, just throwing all over the place. But water always finds its level with him, and it found its level already this season. Baker, I remember when the first month of the season happened, people would tag me in all these Baker Mayfield stuff. I haven't been tagged in a Baker Mayfield stat in a while, because he's evened out. Like Baker does this. He's up and down, and that's why Cleveland decided to move on. I didn't mind their approach to go get Deshaun Watson. People look at who he ended up being with Cleveland, and that's fair, but that's not who he was in Houston, and he was in his mid-20s. This idea, I don't know how a quarterback just disappears and just loses all his talent. The guy can't play football for whatever reason now. So bottom line is, and to your point about Stefanski, yes, I agree that the offense should not be the weak side of the ball when you have an offensive-minded head coach, but also Dylan Gabriel was trash. I'm not a Dylan Gabriel guy whatsoever. People said Joe Flacco didn't work with Kevin Stefanski. That's not technically true. Joe Flacco took the Browns to the playoffs 2 years ago in Kevin Stefanski's offense. They have no wide receivers. The offensive line is older and took a step back this year against what I anticipated coming in. But I also got to give Stefanski credit for the development of Shedeur over the last every week. He has gotten better and better and better. He has to finish that trend, but I think Stefanski does deserve some credit for the development of that. People said he didn't do anything with Dylan Gabriel. Maybe Dylan Gabriel's just not good.
Yeah, but I think he also deserves some blame with Baker not being there too. And I'm not saying Baker,
because you wanted to get an elite quarterback. I know it didn't work out, but like at the time, the Steelers, there was 5 or 6 teams that were all lining up to get Deshaun Watson. It wasn't like everyone knew he was bad, and of course Cleveland takes him. Cleveland was desperate for a quarterback. People say that all the time to me like it's an insult. I'm like, if you're not desperate for a quarterback, then what are you even doing? Because if you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a shot to contend. Even the Bengals, with all their deficiencies, the only reason they still have a chance to contend is because they have a quarterback. I don't blame Cleveland for being desperate to go try to find a Joe Burrow level one.
Well, yeah, I'm not blaming them for the Deshaun Watson thing. What I am saying is, though, even with Baker this year, a lot of Baker's situation is they've had so many injuries. I mean, he hasn't had anybody to throw to. I mean, when you lose pretty much your whole team, your whole offense, of course you're going to start to slide. He's had to deal with that, but I think he's good enough. Again, he doesn't have to, I don't think he has to be a superstar. I don't think the Browns need a superstar per se to win. Drake May's not a superstar. There's a lot of guys that are in the playoff hunt that aren't superstars, but he's had a lot of adversity on that particular team. And if Stefanski had handled that situation right, when Baker got hurt, and Baker should not have been playing, but he wanted to play because he was coming up on a contract, and you put that guy in there, and then he looked like crap because he was hurt, that's on the coach. And I can understand them, throwing a Hail Mary at Deshaun Watson. I get it. I can understand. But again, that to me, that's a lot on the coach. That's the way that whole situation was mishandled. And again, I think the Browns would have been better off if they had Baker Mayfield. And I would venture to say, if you took a poll, your fans would probably agree with that.
Well, yeah, when
hindsight, I think you guys would be a lot further ahead.
I don't think they'd be further ahead. I think there's a lot of teams out there that have quarterbacks that, like Sam Darnold's a prime example. Sam Darnold won 14 games last year for the Vikings. 14 games. Now, would they much rather have that this year than what they're having? Absolutely. But they said, we know there's a ceiling with that, and we're not going to get to where we ultimately want to go with that, so we can't financially marry that. People were ripping the Browns so much at the time, saying, I can't believe they're actually going to give him, because at the time this was a lot. At the time, 35 was that like high number for quarterbacks, 40 in that range. I can't believe Cleveland's going to go in the ballpark of 35 to 40 for Baker Mayfield, who, yes, and I was a Baker guy, but I also saw that, okay, is he a Josh Allen? Is he a Patrick Mahomes? Is he a Lamar, a Joe Burrow? No, he wasn't. And it's dangerous when you give court like Trevor Lawrence. Look at the Jags, who are winning games. But watch, Bob, when they get knocked out of the playoffs this year, the narrative about Trevor Lawrence will be he's good, he's putting up numbers, but he's not Joe Burrow, he's not Josh Allen. That narrative always exists out there, and I think that would have existed with Baker and is starting to develop now in Tampa. But your reasons are right. The injuries are depleting Tampa, no doubt about it.
Yeah, but I want you to look at the Bengals offensive look. They've gotten that right. Now, and I think a lot of it has to do with the coaching. Scott Peters has been a godsend to the Bengals. Their offensive line, again, is like top 10 now. In fact, I just read that the other day. They're playing actually pretty well. And the only bad thing about that'll probably save Duke Tobin's job.
Oh, gosh.
That, but
I mean, I don't even know who Duke Tobin ain't going to fire himself, right? Because I don't even know.
I know. All right. Thanks, Jess. Appreciate you, bro.
Appreciate you. 937-518 if you're just joining us here on a Friday. It's the Justin Kinder Show presented by Frickers. Browns or Bengals front office? Which front office is the better front office? Which front office do you trust more? All right. The Bengals with Joe Burrow makes you feel more warm and fuzzy. But damn it, you're missing the playoffs for the third straight year. The Browns front office makes a ton of mistakes, but my goodness, you look at the talent all up and down that roster that they drafted, that they developed. You look at the free agents that they've spent money on. You look at the most recent rookie class. It's like the Browns check off more boxes, but the Bengals checked off the most important box, the biggest box, the most important one of all, and that's quarterback. So all I'm saying is when and if Cleveland's front office, constructed as is, ever does get that quarterback, I love having the Haslam's money at that point because quarterbacks mask a lot of problems. There's a reason the Bengals got to a Super Bowl with the quarterback getting sacked 70 times because you have an elite quarterback, right? Like he masked those offensive line is bad. That defense is bad. They can't run the football. The quarterback masks a lot of those problems, but the quarterback isn't good enough to overcome all of those problems. Cleveland does a good job of fixing a lot of problems to where it wouldn't have to be on Joe Burrow's shoulders to carry everything. And I don't mean Joe Burrow in Cleveland. I just mean whoever their quarterback would be. I want Shador to be the guy or Mendoza to be the guy. I don't give a damn who the guy is. I wish Dylan Gabriel would have worked out. I wish Deshaun Watson would have been the quarterback that he was in Houston. Person, questionable. Quarterback, though, you can't tell me that if Deshaun, and there's no reason why he should not have been what he was in Houston. It's one of the weirdest. It's typical Cleveland, though. But we know how good Deshaun was in Houston. And my goodness, if he would have ended up being that guy in Cleveland, I who knows how good Cleveland could have been. But with that defense, that run game, and an elite quarterback, they would have checked off everything. AJ, you are on live, sir. How are you?
Hey, what's up, Kenner? Hey, real quick, you're asking who has a better front office. I think they're both not that great. Browns, I would give the slight edge. And really what it comes down to is finances. The Browns are in a better position to have more finances available because the Haslams are not – they have other business ventures outside of the family, outside of the NFL team. With the Browns, and this is very similar to like the Buss family was with the Lakers. They didn't have wealth coming in from different revenue streams outside of what the Lakers brought to the table. It's the same thing. And now look, Jeannie Buss, the Buss family doesn't even own the Lakers anymore. And it's the same thing with the Browns. They just have, and when I say the Brown family, they just don't have as much income available to them from separate revenue streams. And they're so dependent on the success of the football team to be able to offer these big contracts.
Oh, no. And I'm very well aware of the Bengals' limitations. And for everything you're just saying right there, that's why it can't be the Bengals, I think, have probably I mean, you take Joe Burrow out of the equation, and to their credit, though, and AJ, are you a Bengals fan? I can't remember. What's your team?
I am a Bengals fan. I'm a rational Bengals fan, though.
So I don't know let me ask you this. I feel like I don't know what's more painful, getting everything else right and never getting the quarterback right, or once a decade getting the quarterback right and never being able to get everything else right. I mean, from Carson Palmer, and I don't want to put Andy Dalton on the level of Palmer and Burrow, but Andy Dalton was a very good quarterback. I would that in Cleveland with this defense at that level back in the day, that would have been great. But they always get the quarterback right and receiver right, but never everything else. And then the Browns always seem to get everything else right and never quarterback. Which one do you think is more frustrating? I mean, as a Browns fan here, I think it's pretty dang frustrating seeing this defense, seeing the way that they run the football and just recycling through quarterbacks over and over. But it's also pretty demoralizing seeing you get a franchise quarterback, a generational quarterback, and just wasting it. I think both are pretty damn painful. I don't know which one's worse, though.
Yeah, they are. That's a difficult question. It's a really good question. I would say with the track record of the Browns and how many quarterbacks they have cycled through over the decades, I would say that would be a little bit more frustrating because, like you said earlier, if you ain't got a quarterback, you ain't got nothing. You have no opportunity whatsoever. At least if you do hit on a quarterback, once every 10 years, it's you still have that sense of hope.
Hey,
and
AJ,
I have a lot of friends who are Browns fans, and a lot of them, we have this discussion about hope, and a lot of my friends that have been Browns fans for a long time, let's say 30 years, they have a sense of hopelessness.
I mean, yeah.
And at least if you hit on the quarterback, you got something to hang your hat on for hope, and until they prove otherwise.
AJ, I appreciate the call. I hope you have good plans for the weekend. Stay warm. Appreciate you.
Later, buddy.
You know what I just thought about in that conversation? Like, again, I don't know which is worse. Getting everything else right except the quarterback, or getting the quarterback right and never getting never getting anything else right. Everyone's like, well, you have to have the quarterback, and you do. But you realize that the Bengals got the quarterback right in 2020. We're heading into 2026. The Bengals have made the playoffs twice since drafting Joe Burrow. How many times have the Browns, without a quarterback, made the playoffs in that same time span? Twice. That's crazy. That the Browns and the Bengals have made the playoffs the same amount of time since Joe Burrow got drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals. Crazy. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Speaking of teams not doing right by their star players, how about the Reds and Elly De La Cruz? I found this to be, interesting. We'll have an update about Elly De La Cruz in the World Baseball Classic. That's all coming up next. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers.
Some shows give you hot takes. We give you hot takes, cold takes, wrong takes. We'll let you know when Kinner has a right take. The Justin Kinner Show. Weekdays 3 to 5 on 1410 ESPN Wing AM. Now, back to the Justin Kinner Show on 1410 ESPN Radio and on the stream at wingam.com.
All right, everybody, we welcome you back here on a Friday, 3:53 here in the Miami Valley. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Wright State is on the road to take on Marshall tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Jim Brown and Chris Collins will be on the call, and we'll have that for you right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Dayton, the Flyers, they'll be in action tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, as they welcome in North Florida. Dayton 7-3 on the season as we currently sit here right now, and they're looking again just to try to get a final couple big road or non-con wins, of course, before they turn all their attention towards the A10. Interesting non-con stretch here for the Flyers. You lose to BYU. They did beat Marquette earlier in the season, so that definitely helps. But as it comes out, you start getting those net rankings out. You start realizing, Marquette's actually not very good. But Dayton 7-3 on the season. Not a bad start. The Bonnies, St. Bonaventure, 10-1 in the A10. George Mason, 9-1. Richmond, St. Louis, 8-1. Similar records there. Davidson at 7-2, and then George Washington and the Flyers, both sitting at 8-3. I'm sorry. George Washington is at 8-3. The Flyers are at 7-3, but they're looking to improve to 8-3 tomorrow. With North Florida in town. So they're going to have Florida State after North Florida, and then they'll have Liberty, and then they'll tip off A10 play with Fordham. So again, UD at this point, they lost to Cincinnati in the third game of the season. They lost against BYU in a top 10 showdown in their MTE, and then they just lost 86-73 against Virginia at home. So Dayton didn't capitalize on an opportunity right there. So they have to beat North Florida tomorrow. Florida State, look, at this point, the chances of an at-large bid, Dayton would have to just absolutely dominate through A10 play to get an at-large bid at this point. That's what makes this matchup with Florida State and even Liberty very important, as they look to close it out. Liberty 6-3 on the season, so they'll have them coming up. As they'll be welcoming in Liberty to UD Arena. But that Florida State game is going to be important for the Flyers as they look to try to continue to stay in that. But the problem is Florida State's just not good either. Like this non-con, you beat Cincinnati, you get that top 10 win against BYU. Obviously, if you take care of business the other night with Virginia in town, they just don't have any sexy wins in the non-con. So this is turning out to be one of those things where UD is going to have to be almost perfect throughout A10 play to put themselves back into the at-large conversation. But you got to win the North Florida, Florida State, Liberty matchup. Dayton favored to win in all of those. You can't drop any of those. The Florida State game, that's at UD Arena. That's coming up on December 16th, next Tuesday. That's an important one as far as UD goes. So nonetheless, Wright State with Marshall. That's coming up tomorrow. Wright State is going to be at Marshall. And that's a 2 o'clock tip-off, and we'll have that for you right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. And then after that, Wright State's going to welcome in Miami out of the MAC, and Miami's just been phenomenal this season. Miami's 9-0. Miami is red hot. They're the Red Hawks, and they are red hot right now. They've beat Air Force. Have they played the sexiest of schedule? No. That's why I'm really looking forward to this matchup on Tuesday. That's the Raiders' next home game, by the way. Marshall tomorrow and then Miami coming up. I like that head-to-head between the Raiders and Miami right now. In fact, ESPN's matchup predictor has Wright State as the favorite in that. Miami's 9-0. All right, they're 2-0 on the road. Wright State's 5-5, but Miami has also played nobody. The Red Hawks have played nobody. Wright State has played a very good non-conference schedule. They've played some of the best teams in the MAC. They played Butler out of the Big East. They played Cal out of the ACC. And they played at Cal. They've really challenged themselves in the non-con. They went to Stetson and they blew out Stetson 79-62. They just punched Doug Gottlieb's Green Bay Phoenix 86-58 at the Nutter Center earlier in the week, and they got a big one against Marshall. And ESPN's matchup predictor right there, they have Marshall as slightly favored over Wright State. Marshall 6-4 on the season, the Thundering Herd. They've beat some similar opponents. They also played Virginia, who UD just played. They lost 104-78, but they did beat Toledo. They beat UMass, and they're coming off a win against Western Kentucky. So Marshall will play Wright State tomorrow. I said 2 o'clock. I'm sorry. That's 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock tomorrow. Nonetheless. But all right, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We're going to step away for a few moments. We'll have our conversation with Jason Fitz and Keith Byers. We have a lot more coming your way. 1410 ESPN Radio. Oh, before I wrap up, I did want to talk about this. I'm sorry. So this came out 2 days ago that there are reports that Elly De La Cruz may not have received permission from the Reds to play in the 2026 World Baseball Classic. Okay, Major League Baseball, the World Baseball Classic, posted about his participation in the tournament last week or earlier in the week. So this past Tuesday, MLB put out a graphic about Elly De La Cruz performing in the World Baseball Classic. The World Baseball Classic highlighted it as well. Both MLB and the World Baseball Classic kept all of their ads and promos up. The only ones they took down were the ones that featured Elly De La Cruz. And, my problem with this is let the kid play. I understand being cautious and you don't want to risk the face of your franchise right now going to get hurt in the World Baseball Classic. But, it's not as if you have done everything in your power to appease him as of late. I'm here to tell you, maybe I'm a hypocrite, but if the Reds would have actually got a deal done with Kyle Schwarber a couple days ago, I don't think anybody cares. I think I would even be saying, you know what? I don't want Elly to get hurt either. I don't want him participating in the World Baseball Classic either. But if this is true, and I haven't seen any follow-up to this, but if the Reds denied Elly De La Cruz to play in this, if I'm Elly, I'm like, what are you guys doing? We were talking about the Bengals' bad front office a little bit ago. How about the Reds? ESPN's Jeff Passan and others came out and just ripped the Reds for people are saying that, the Reds just couldn't afford it. No, the Reds actually had the most money to spend. According to ESPN's Jeff Passan, they had money set aside to get this deal done. They just chose not to. They chickened out at the end. So if that's the case, you screw over your fan base, you screw over your players, and most importantly, you screw over your once-in-a-generation talent in Elly De La Cruz, that if you would have showed him, hey, we are doing everything we can, we are doing things we normally don't do to put stars around you to maximize your time here, if they did that and then asked him not to play in the World Baseball Classic, I'm all for it. I understand. But the fact that you're not doing anything to make Elly better, you're not doing anything to make this team better, you're not doing anything to enhance his presence here, why are you denying him You're already denying him opportunities to play deep into October. Now you want to deny him opportunities to play in the World Baseball Classic? I have a huge problem with this. If this ends up ultimately being true, I really hope the Reds did not deny him the opportunity to play in this. Let him go play. You're doing nothing to help him, but you want him to drop everything he's doing to help you. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. It's like in radio with non-competes, I'm just saying, if they're not willing to give you more pieces to help you, then they don't have the right to ask you to sign a non-compete. That's why I don't sign a non-compete. Just throwing that out there. No non-compete. Like, if you're the Reds, if you're doing nothing to help him, why should you sit him out of this? Why? I don't like it. Not a fan. Not a fan. The Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio, hour number 2, coming up next.
The Reds tried to make a splash in free agency. They sent the player a Venmo request instead. Only Cincinnati could negotiate backwards. The Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio.